So welcome everyone to Villa Miami. This is going to be a very exciting conversation that we're having with some of the most amazing people that I've met in our space. And I just want to thank you all for joining us, but really looking forward to this dialogue today and getting to know Mario Carbone and Vicky Charles. They are really the leaders in their space. They define art, culture and design and a way of thinking and living that is really special. They're always ahead of the curve and really driving kind of innovation in anything they do. And just to, collaborate for Tara, David Martin, that's my name, Louis Birdman, Kevin Wenger, all our collaborators and team members that are here. This has been a very special project, and Villa is only 70 residences, and it's under construction right now, and we're really excited to deliver it. And but anyway, so Vicky, I would love to kind of know more about you and who you are, and what your story and of life, and if you could share a little bit of that, that'd be amazing.
I'll try. I'm very shy, so I'm gonna go bright red very soon. This is not my natural habitat, being in the limelight. So I'm sorry already. I started in the industry in hospitality. I was design director at Soho House, but I waited tables for them for 20 years, and started through that and organized all their parties for the Cannes Film Festival, for the Oscars, and then fell into design. I did Soho House Miami, and ran the design department for about 10 years. And it just came a point in my life after working for them for 20 years when, is this the next 20 years? I'm going to be the only person with gray hair at Soho House, so I need to leave, So 10 years ago, I set up my own studio, completely the opposite. If anyone called and said, I want Soho House, absolutely no way, you call Soho House. And I just stayed in the residential. I was very lucky to have some very loyal, fun clients. And yeah, I've stayed mainly in the residential world. But, hospitality's in my blood. Working with other great people in the industry kind of tempted me back into it. And so here we are.
Great. So Mario, tell us a little more about your story.
Hi, David.
Yeah, hi.
Well, I was born on a chilly night in January, Queens, New York. A little of my story. Born and raised New Yorker, who always had a love of food. I think the derivative of that is probably my grandparents, and that sort of beautiful stereotypical immigrant family around the table and preparing all day and putting in a great amount of just currency in what they served and how they did it. And finding a love in it and a passion for it. My grandparents were my sort of first babysitters, and I remember, kind of when I was old enough to clean peas and do the little jobs in the kitchen and be with them, that's how they watched me. And as an atrocious student in school, my options outside of high school were really mediocrity or try my luck at actually being a professional chef. And thankfully I chose that one. And many years later, started a very small restaurant on Mulberry Street that served 40 people, maybe less than 40 people for sure, 20 people a night or at a time. And one good thing led to another. We met, I started it with one of my three partners, Rich Teresi. We met Jeff, and this little thing grew, one step in front of the next, and obviously having no idea that it would lead to something like this today. Where we're part of this incredible residential project. I would have never dreamed of that, getting C's in high school. But here we are. Told you, Mom.
Amazing. And it's funny because they both are so actively involved in everything they do, but Vicky's taken a certain a certain focus on how many projects she takes and which project she takes and has kind of stayed in a certain way, and that's because she's in that interior design space. And something I'm going to want to talk to Mario about is how his expansion and how he still stays engaged and is like, there's probably like 25 Mario Carbones, right? But Vicky,
My own little factory.
yeah, exactly. So Vicky, talk to us a little bit about like, your, creative process, your discipline, kind of how you approach, your career and growth today, and a little bit about, why Villa and why you chose to kind of come on board, because it was kind of a big thing to have Vicky say yes. So anyways, yeah.
I mean, I just have 24 hours in my day, so I have to be very careful about what I work on. And, and you kind of, with every project, you want the unicorn, which is creatively interesting. So something that's really exciting, location and a blank canvas and the kind of the freedom to create. You want, number two is you want to work with a great team and the top people in their industry, A players. And you hope you get paid. It's number three. That's the unicorn. So our creative process is really leaning into location architecture and really thinking about the end use, who lives there. And it's very hard with something not to imagine yourself and your lifestyle or your client's lifestyle. So that's kind of been the process with Villa Miami. Is who's going to end up using it, whether it's one of my current residential clients or myself, and leaning into kind of the inspiration of the architecture and location.
And so Mario, talk to us about a little bit about, and I want you to talk about why, we did this, right? And why this collaboration, but also just a little bit about your growth. I mean, your global growth that I've seen is pretty amazing, and the level of service and detail and their staff is so well trained and well versed and humble and hardworking, and just walk me through how you build that culture as you grow and how you maintain it.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to even conceivably grow at any scale, but certainly at the pace that we're operating, is because there aren't more than one of me or Rich or Jeff, is to have incredible buy-in from your team. Like they have to, beyond drinking the Kool-Aid, right? They have to imbue all of the same thought processes and philosophical agreements, and you have to envision that they're going to make the same decision you will 9 out of 10 times if you're not in that room. If you're going to grow to a place where, it was really scary growing beyond 1 or 2 stores, because then you get to the realization, I can't be at all of them tonight. And as soon as you make that, as soon as you bridge that gap in your mind, where you go from this very mom and pop thing where I'm here every night, and when it's closed, it's my night off, which is how it starts, and it's beautiful that way, to we're at a certain size, which happens, quickly with just a few stores. I can't get to them all. So how do I deal with that? How do I come to grips with that? And it's difficult, and it's difficult to let go of something and to give it to somebody else and hope that they're going to do it in a similar manner. And it takes a great amount of buy-in. We have an incredible team of people that have been with us. The percentage of people that have been with us since day one is pretty astounding. We're a 13 or so year company, and we've got over 50 people that are over 10 years, which is just remarkable. Those are the people that are the first line of defense in growth. They're the ones that are out there championing what we do, making those decisions on the fly as if I was there. And certainly it's the sum of its parts that get us to this whole. Because if I had to run around all over the world every night and make rigatoni, that's not a good idea. That's not a model. And we always wanted to be entrepreneurs beyond that, right? I think we believe in the art of commerce, and I think that's something that we try to teach our team. We try to, for those that work with us and then move on to go do their own things, that's what we try to give to them, is this idea that we're a business. How do we grow this business? And it takes the people, it takes a community, it takes a village.
It's beautiful. Well said. Want to talk about a little trend that we've been seeing, and I think going back to Vicky, your choice about just people in society and this whole concept of clubs, right? And what is a club? What does that mean? How it has evolved today, and the whole community thing, right? And I would love to kind of hear from you where you think it's successful or inappropriate, and also where it potentially fails, and was that ever in your thinking as it related to this project?
It's a big question. I think the sense of community takes time, right? It's about private club, whatever you want to call it. It's about creating a group of like-minded people who are respectful and care. And that takes time. That's not an overnight success. And I think the whole design is so important to create that sense of people spending time together. We talk a lot about invisible design and the things you can't see. It's like the complaints department. When design works, you probably don't notice 90% of it. It's only when something's wrong that you start to feel bad, if the AC is blowing in your face, or the lights are too bright, or the colors aren't in harmony, and that makes you feel uneasy. You don't relax. You're not the best version of yourself. You're less kinder to the person next to you, and that whole sense of community isn't the best kind of groundwork for it. So it's all the things that all the stuff that my office, we do. We take a long time thinking about functionality and about balance and about use, and how things will last and age. That then kind of gives that platform for that sense of space. So I think when it fails, it's been rushed, or the complaints department has a lot of things they haven't thought about.
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Mario, clubs, what are they? What's happening with them?
Well, obviously, it's a giant new category that's, a very old idea that's seeing a real renaissance right now. It's not a new idea, and I think what we're seeing is not dissimilar, just kind of speaking from hospitality, it's not dissimilar from, the restaurant industry. I think we're going to get the same amount of triage. We're going to get the same amount of successes. Those numbers are pretty stark. And I think if you're going to be successful in what is already becoming now a very competitive environment of clubs, the club space, you need to stand for something, just like restaurants to me. Who are you and why are you important? That's a speech I give to the team every year. Who are we and why are we important? Because if you have a particular perspective and you stand for something and you're providing a particular thing and a reason for them to be there, then you should exist. I think if you're only there because you think you'd want to be in a member space and it's really just a new business vertical for you, but you don't really have a perspective, you don't have anything to say, you're not really providing anything of any real currency, you're probably not. And I think that those, for me, those are the exact same tent poles for restaurants, for our core business. If you have a product that needs to exist, that you think people are going to want, you will continue to go on. And I think the same is going to be for the club space. I think we're going to see a great deal of triage because we've just seen a huge amount of new product in the market. There's 1 million clubs out there. How many of them really need to exist? I think we're going to find out.
And it's interesting because in working on Villa, it was interesting how, these buildings turn strangers to neighbors, right? And so I think today people want to be in a building sometimes with like-minded people, and also, so all the decision making on Villa, and I'm just curious, when you guys first were introduced, I know Kevin Wenger was the first one that mentioned me to you to me, and Mario, kind of when you first introduced to Villa, and then working with Vicky, I'm just curious, what was going through your mind?
I remember fondly when I first met Vicky, because at that meeting, she had a bunch of printed inspiration material on a table, and we had just met for the first time, and we were just starting the process of putting these things together. And she had printed out a bunch of images of a very famous private villa in Milan that I am a huge fan. I adore. And I saw these pictures, and I was like, "Is that Villa Necchi?" in Milan, and she's like, oh yeah, I love this property so much, and she went through the color tones and the lines of it. I was like, yep, this is gonna go really well. Like it's a pretty obscure choice that I'm obsessed with, and she's like, oh yeah, I love this property so much, and kind of walked me through why they were there and how they might manifest themselves in this building, and I was professionally in love.
That's the way to a man's heart, images.
Also, did we not pay the air conditioning bill in here?
That's the 90%. Yeah, that was it. That was it. I remember that same meeting. I was like, I have an idea. Both of us are busy. We're not going to small talk this and just concept high level. You know how much time. I'm like, let's get this done. I think when you work in the restaurant industry, there's always a deadline as well. And I understand that from being in hospitality. I was like, I have an hour of your time. We are going straight to what I think this should be. Luckily, it worked. And Jeff was just like, yeah, we're done. And that was it.
But you both have, I don't know if it's a following, but you also both have a point of view. And I just felt you guys, it's not so often some of these, marriages are shotgun marriages and you don't connect, right? And I'm sure you've had stories or examples of clients that you don't connect with or yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be creative, there has to be a energy and a dialogue. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best work. I mean, Mario's my muse. So you kind of have to, he has to, and he should, and thank God he treats me with the respect that he knows I'm creating for him, It's the same with all my clients. If anyone's ever renovated their house or even just try to call a plumber, something's broken, things go wrong. It's painful, it's hard, everybody lets you down at some point during the process. Things get stuck in customs, they get lost, even the UPS guy disappears. So you have to be able to communicate creatively and just make that call when you're like, I disagree and we have to talk this through. And good design comes from that dialogue.
All you can hope for is a point of view. Like, it's so rare these days where you meet someone or a company or a brand that has a very clear point of view and objective, because it's really easy this day and age to kind of waffle back and forth with whatever the current trend of the day is as you try to capture, whether it's fans or likes or dollars, to just kind of be steadfast and really confident in who you are and what you do and how you deliver that product. And then it becomes so easy to interface with that because you know exactly what you're going to get, and it's becoming a very rare thing. And I think both of you have that, and that's why this works so well. I think that why this end result is going to be something that has a real narrative, a real story in what is a very, crowded and noisy environment.
Yeah, I mean, it takes discipline. You have to shut out the noise, right? Like social media is probably, Pinterest is probably the worst thing that happened to designers because it's so everywhere. And so you have to kind of focus. I mean, I personally don't do any of that because inspiration comes from traveling and feeling and, being open and not seeing it through a camera. So that's just a really important point, which takes a lot of discipline to listen and spend time thinking about the process.
When I first mentioned this project to Jeff, his biggest idea, right, is that his house, you basically are staring at the site from North Bay, and so he's like, yeah, I would love to stare at the building go up, and he would always think about the neighborhood of the water, right? He would think about all the Venetian islands, the North Bay Road, kind of just how this strip of Edgewater is kind of becoming something very special and unique. But it was a little crazy to build full floor units in this market and really build homes. And his idea, he was like, David, we have to build homes. It's like in the sky, and they're going to be a deal. Everybody's going to make great money because houses are trading on Venetian, on the beach that are whatever, 25, 30, And so that was the big idea. But, when you were thinking of a residential building and you're not doing 100 buildings, right? You're doing homes, right? And so what was going through your head, both of you, and Vicky, if you could go first. I mean, what were you thinking about? Yeah.
I mean, so we started with location and living on the water, and obviously I'm English. I spent a lot of time, we have an office in Italy, so I spent a lot of time just outside Venice. looking at those European cities and living on the water and the Riviera, and it's just so romantic and so exciting. And so how do you translate all that rich inspiration to Miami in a new construction? And so it was really about like the timeless materials of that. And then, you know, you're seeing images of all the marbles and the floors. We talk about furniture like it's clothes on your body. And if you're healthy, you can kind of wear anything. So, but spending time thinking about floors, walls, those finishes is the most important thing. And it was kind of inspired by Europe and the Riviera. And also then the inspiration of the color palette of Miami. It's so different to anywhere else in the world. It's kind of the light is like nowhere else. And so kind of that was the warmth that we brought here.
I think for us it was a challenge that we accepted and put in front of our team. You know, obviously traditionally we're in the four walls of a restaurant, which for me means that I'm taking care of somebody for 2 hours. You know, you come in, you walk in the door, and you're mine for 2 hours. I'm going to take care of you in this meal. And I think the challenge, you know, as we enter our sort of second decade of existence and the opportunity was, can we take our approach to guest relations, to hospitality, can we apply it towards 24 hours? Can I take care of somebody all day, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed? What does that mean to us? How does that manifest itself, you know, in Major Food Group? And that is just such an enormous challenge that I just love that. I love that, to put that in front of my team and say, what can we do to affect someone's full day? How can we take that now, to take this 2 hour window and expand on it, and to let, you know, have David have the faith in us to do that, and accept the challenge, and now put the challenge on our team. And now as you watch it sort of come to reality, you know, where this sensation of affecting the skyline of a city that we're you know, newly inhabitants of, is just one of the greatest honors of my career, for sure.
Talk about Miami. You do work in so many other cities, and so do you. And talk to us a little bit about how you see Miami's positioning, and how we can reinforce some of our assets, maybe in a better way sometimes. But, you know, I'm just curious, how is Miami's positioning within the world, just from, and maybe it's a bad question, but I'm just curious.
No, I mean, it's an incredible place to work in terms of the light. Just as a pure creative, you know, there is, and that kind of, the use of those materials, you know. I think Miami has a bad reputation in some interiors for all being all white. And I didn't want to create a shiny white box in these apartments. So there is a layer of warmth. I think it's really important when you're home. I mean, I think there's nothing worse to wake up in a bright white, blue light bathroom. Like, you need kind of rose and warm colors just to be kind to yourself every morning. So that was kind of how I led it. And then just thinking about that kind of home usage and materials that wear well. This is for families and life, and it should age, and it should just get better with time.
Makes sense. And, you know, curious from your perspective, how do you see Miami positioned in the world and everyone you engage with?
I will disclaimer, this is a New Yorker, born and raised. But here's what I think. I think Miami has been blessed with some of the great raw material of any city in the world, right? I think that from the waterfronts to the landscape to just its positioning in the world to its climate, it's been blessed with the raw materials. It's obviously always been, you know, one of the most well-known cities in the world. And if ever there was anything that there's been a knock on in the city, I think that and what I think is the greatest benefit of this most recent boom, and what hopefully we're doing a small part in affecting as well, is the arts. I think when a world-class city can't be a world-class city without world-class arts. And if we can do a small part of that, which what started with culinary arts and now into architecture and affecting people's homes, if we can do a small part of that and everyone or does a little piece of it that's coming, you know, I speak as now a new native of this place, a new inhabitant of the city. And what I'm looking for both to do as a gift, because it's the city's welcomed us with open arms, obviously, and we've had this incredible boom as a company here. What I'd like to give back with this project and with the restaurants is a little bit of a buoying, a high tide of the arts. You know, high tide and all the ships will rise. And I think that if there's a category to focus on now to add to what is this great place, that would be it for me.
That's great. That's great. I'm so impressed by how much you're sharing, both of you, about your lives and what influences you, and truly honored to just be working with you and doing a project with you guys. It's but you know, it's just this project has been you know just simple and aligned with like so many different people that have collaborated here, you know, including Kevin and Louis, and I'm just like, you know, you do these projects, you have other clients, you have other projects, right, Mario? But there's something about this project that's just so special and unique, you know, and I think for all of you out there, you know, I think this is going to be probably a one-of-a-kind building. I don't think there's another developer crazy enough to do single unit floors, right, in another building, right? I don't think that's. But this is really this is something I think for all of you is special, and it's really a unique kind of, you know, piece of art and creative and just being design driven, and it had so many. You know, maybe just talk a little bit, Vicky, about kind of when you were thinking of the amenitization of this, kind of like. You know buildings, you all have lived in buildings, right? But just, if you could just talk a little bit before we go about, you know, just like what is it that you were doing in the amenities, right? What were you thinking about, Mario? What were you telling her about it? Like, what was that about? Talk to us a little bit. Just a quick thing about Villa, if we can. Just a quick shout out to Villa. We should.
Talk about the building.
We should. Let's talk about Villa. Let's talk about Villa instead of you guys. I'm so sorry, guys. But
No.
All right.
I mean, we can talk a little bit like how the world changed from COVID and how people live, you know. And I think designing the apartment, so we are creating the amenities as an extension of your home. So you can't fit everything in your apartment, but to create a space for wellness, because we're all stuck behind screens and sitting still. So to create this beautiful and a space that you want to be in as part of the and you walk through as an extension should have the same thread as the apartment. So it's so you treat it and you feel like you're at home. Was created in the process. From the minute from you got out your car to the lobby experience and those floors and the materials, and there is, you know, that palette will continue in different versions. It gets darker, it gets lighter, we turn the volume up, we turn it down, we play with pattern, we play with the same stones. And then in your apartment, it's also, the apartments aren't meant to be about my ego and what I would want. I'm meant to give you a beautiful backdrop for your favorite color furniture. Add it into your style, whether it's traditional or contemporary or your favorite color is pink. It doesn't matter. My backdrop isn't about my.
Mario?
I think what I spend most of my time thinking about is somewhere in between the juxtaposition of public and private spaces. From a food and beverage and hospitality standpoint, you know, you'll have this on the ground floor that I think is really important, because there's an energy from a public restaurant that, one, it's my favorite sensation in the world is a building. And then there's the private spaces where you'll have your opportunities, whether it's in your home kitchen or in the private food and beverage spaces that'll be throughout the building, where we can do more curated things that are less around, you know, the public at large. So I think that the juxtaposition is really important. I think you need the energy from a bustling restaurant, and I think you're also going to want private spaces where we can customize things, curate things to your own, whether it's in your apartment or in some of the private spaces in the building.
Well said. Well, thank you both for your time today. I really appreciate it. This was amazing. Thank you, guys, and please stay around. Bye.